They want to send this man to represent the United States at the UN, but he can't explain the job, can't name the agencies, and can't defend his own record. Senator Jeff Merkley just exposed everything the Trump State Department didn't want you to hear.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Senator Merkley is next.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I share concern about the troubling points of view you've expressed. Here we are in February, and February often starts with folks attending MLK breakfasts, thinking about some of the points he made for inclusion. And I think a phrase that resonates across America is when he said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will be judged someday, or that we will one day live in a nation where they will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." And yet you devote yourself to judging people by the color of their skin. And I find that type of prejudice unacceptable. And I think it would be absolutely unacceptable for you to represent the United States in an international body. So I find all of that very, very troubling. But I also find it troubling that your resume is pretty thin for this position. You did serve as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. I'm sure there's some international issues that might resonate for. I do serve as the ranking Democrat on the Interior Spending Committee, so I'm very familiar with those issues. But that's a very small piece internationally. You did serve as a visiting fellow in Resource Development, Energy and Resources Institute in New Delhi, a research fellow at the Hoover Institute on Energy. But I believe, and I'll just ask it plainly in case I'm mistaken, you have not served for the United States previously on the U.S. mission to the UN. Is that correct?
That's correct, Senator.
Thank you. And I believe you have not served in an international organization. Is that correct?
Senator, thank you for that question. As I referred to in my opening remarks, I was an official research assistant on several of Professor Juma's at Harvard's international organization related things related to sustainable development goals.
Yes, you wrote and you thought about some of these things, but you did not serve in a staff capacity on an international organization.
Senator, thank you for that question. That is correct.
Okay. And have you served in any position in a diplomatic role with the State Department?
Senator, I have not, although of course I had many opportunities to do track 2 diplomacy while working with Secretary Shultz.
And do you have a background or expertise, and I know you have some in energy, in nuclear nonproliferation?
Senator, I've actually written a book about nuclear power that does go into some of these issues, and I'm fairly familiar with nonproliferation issues, although certainly would not call myself an expert.
Yeah. I'm familiar with your distributed power in the U.S. Book, but that is very different from the nuclear nonproliferation issue. Which role is most important, the U.S. ambassador to the U.S. mission, the U.S. permanent representative to the UN, or the U.S. representative to the General Assembly?
I believe it would be the U.S. Permanent representative to the UN would be the most important.
Why is that?
I believe, and Senator, I may be incorrect on this, that it's simply the highest ranking of those positions.
That is the role to the Security Council rather than to the UN as a whole. The U.S. is a member of IAEA and IOM and ICAO and FOA and ITU. Which do you think the U.S. should be committed to funding in 2026?
Senator, I can simply tell you I've not been party, obviously, to the funding or defunding decisions, although thank you for your question. I think that it has been the general public statements of the Secretary and others in the administration that standards bodies of all types are particularly important, and I would expect that we would be looking to largely continue to participate in most all standards bodies, but I have not been part of those deliberations, obviously, as a private citizen.
So the administration has publicly committed to funding 3 of those 5. Why those 3 and not the other 2?
Senator, thank you for that question. And I simply, as a private citizen, I don't have insight as to why they have chosen to fund, other than as the generality that if we felt missions were duplicative, if we felt that U.S. interests were not being looked after, or if we felt that they were being run contrary to U.S. interests, that we did not want to participate in those organizations.
Are you familiar with which of the 3 of the 5 they actually committed to funding?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question,
Are
Senator?
you familiar with which of the 3 of the 5 that they were committed to funding?
Senator, I would assume that we have continued to fund the IAEA, and beyond that, I'm not familiar.
Okay. My time is up, so I'll yield back. It is a very, very complex assembly of organizations at the UN, and recently we withdrew from 66 of organizations, 35 non-UN and 31 UN, the lack of your previous experience kind of in that thicket of international connections and lack of experience in some of the key subject matters addressed does concern me, as well as your previous comments. Thank you.
This exchange wasn't a simple confirmation hearing, it was a warning flare. Senator Merkley methodically dismantled the Trump nominee's credibility by exposing a dangerous mix of ideological bias, thin qualifications, and stunning ignorance of how the United Nations actually works. At a moment when global diplomacy is fragile and American leadership is under scrutiny, the idea that someone who had never served in a diplomatic role, never worked inside an international organization, and cannot distinguish the functional hierarchy of U.S. ambassadors could represent the country on the world stage is reckless. What makes this even more alarming is the nominee's open embrace of race-based judgment, directly contradicting the core values articulated by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the principles America claims to uphold. Champion abroad. Diplomacy is not about loyalty to a political movement or guessing which agencies the administration might defund. It's about expertise, credibility, and moral authority. Merkley didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The facts did the damage on their own. This moment perfectly captures the broader Trump approach to governance, hollowing out institutions, sidelining professionals, and replacing competence with ideological alignment. If Democrats don't draw a hard line here, the consequences won't stay inside the hearing room. They'll echo across every international forum where U.S. leadership once mattered.